Demystifying SATA hot plug. I have a BIOS that has an option to enable hot plug on individual ports. I have a sliding enclosure for HDD and SSD, nothing more than a pass-through to power and a SATA port that allow me to cut power to the drive before physically moving it. I would love the convenience of inserting and removing HDD/SSD there without shutting down the computer every time. But while researching about SATA hot swap, out of expensive enterprise solutions, there is zero reliable information. I tried even looking at patents. I can't find a single reliable source that tells me how reliable/unreliable is hot swapping on the consumer world. So, I do have support in my BIOS, motherboard and enclosure. The drivers I've never seen mentioning hot pluggable on the specs, even on the enterprise ones. How much risk of data loss will I be facing for this convenience? Then, hardware aside, there is the software issue. Do I need support on the OS? And is there any command to unplug the drive that must be issued, or does it park its head on power down automatically? There is a slightly informed discussion on the software side here. Edit. Found some more info regarding hot pluggable. From Western Digital, it says every driver that supports SATA by definition of the standard already support hot plugging. SATA-compliant devices thus need no further modification to be hot pluggable and provide the necessary building blocks for a robust hot plug solution, which typically includes device detection even with power-down receptacles, typical of server applications. Pre-charging resistors to passively limit inrush current during drive insertion. Hot plug controllers to actively limit inrush current during drive insertion. Source: this URL. But the above starts another doubt. It says, in order to take advantage of hot plug capabilities for your serial SATA hard drive, you must use the serial SATA power connection, not the legacy Molex power connection. The legacy Molex power connection does not support hot plugging. Some of my drivers are connected from Molex and GT SATA power, just because I'm out of SATA power ports on my SU. From what I could trace, some Molex and SATA power comes from the same 12V rail. And the SATA plug does not have any logic, it seems. It is just dumb plastic. Does that mean I'm safe and the doc refers to drivers that supports both SATA and Molex?
How much risk of data loss will I be facing for this convenience? Unless the drive dies, there's not much risk of data loss. HDD are really reliable with handling unexpected power loss. SSD are not as reliable regarding unexpected power loss. That said, if there's no activities happening on the drive, hot plugging is pretty safe. I do this almost every day. Do I need support on the OS? Nah, the drives doesn't care about the OS. If the OS doesn't support hot plug, then it means the OS might need to restart to detect the drive, and that it won't send commands to the drives for a more graceful shutdown. Worst case scenario, the OS crash, but your drive will be okay. Remember, as long as there are no activities on the drive, then it's pretty safe to unplug it. Is there any command to unplug the drive that must be issued, or does it park its head on power down automatically? There are commands to force the drive to park its heads, but it will also do that when there's no activity on the drive. Can't guarantee that it will park its head automatically on power down, because we can't guarantee it has enough power to do it. Oh, here's a caveat. Some OS might delay sending data to the drive, or saving file system information to the drive. This is when you should use the safely remove or unmount features. This only applies for newly written data.
And the SATA plug does not have any logic, it seems. It is just dumb plastic. That is wrong. The logic contained in the SATA power plug is passive logic, but it is still there. It is easier to see in a picture of the hard drive pins, however it is also present in the power supply connector as well. Notice how some of the pins below are shorter than others. This is so that the pins are connected in a specific order. I don't recall which order, but I believe on the power wires the longer pins are ground and connect first. The data pins are also set up the same way.
Just my 2 cents help. When talking about Molex power makes disk not hot swappable, it is about powering the disk by using the Molex connector that is on the disk itself. In other words, if you use from power supply a Molex power connector with a Molex to SATA power adapter, the disk itself is powered by its SATA power connector, so it may be hot swappable, but if such Molex power is attached to the Molex power connector on the disk, also using a SATA power to Molex power adapter, the disk cannot be hot swapped without risk, electrical peaks on connect and disconnect. Just to let it very clear. For some disks that they have a Molex power connector on them, do not power them through such connector. Molex connector is not safe for hot swap. If the power connector on the disk that is being used is the SATA power connector, then it does not matter where power comes, you can use Molex to SATA power adapters. Since the disk is being powered by its SATA power connector. The risk is using the Molex connector present on some disks. Not all SATA drives has such Molex connector on the disk. Also, a disk powered by SATA power connector that is powered with a Molex to SATA power adapter can die if such Molex connection is not firm or if you disconnect the Molex part. So resuming, never disconnect the Molex power connector, only SATA power connectors. Hope it is clear now. .2 hot swap support. It must be supported, better said, implemented, on SATA port, not on SATA drive, and it also must be supported on the operating system. The OS must know when a drive on a SATA port will be disconnected prior to disconnect. Among modern OS are able to detect abruptly disconnections and still work, other OS just freezes, so user, or software apps, must tell the OS that a disk is going to be removed, eject on Linux, safe remove on Windows, etc. If the OS is not designed for hot swap, weird things can happen when you plug another disk, like the OS thinking the old disk come to live again. And the OS will not see the new disk is different. Modern OS detect hardware changes, other OS do not. So, yes, SATA hot swap must be implemented on SATA controller hardware and on the OS. But not on the disk itself has nothing related with hot swap. To hot swap any disk, the OS flushes all data, and send a command to the disk telling it must flush all its internal cache and then do a spin down. After that the OS tell the SATA driver to disconnect data port and if well designed also power port. Then the user can safely remove the disk, no data can be sent, no power that may cause electrical peaks, etc. But the SATA hardware must detect infinite impedance, no drive is connected, on SATA data port and SATA power port, and get prepared for a new drive. Listening for non-infinite impedances, so it reconnects power and data ports as soon as the other drive is connected. Then it must tell the OS a new hardware has been connected, and the OS must see what it is and load drivers, etc. SATA hot swap must be implemented on hardware. Oh, yes, it must be. Some manufacturers are a bit lazy and do not follow SATA specs, They do not implement hotplug, hot swap, etc. Sometimes I found SATA 3 ports that died when connecting a drive while system is powered. I recommend one test prior to test with the OS loaded. Boot to BIOS without drive connected to SATA and see BIOS do not detect the drive, then plug the drive very carefully without exiting the BIOS, and recheck that the BIOS now detects the disk. If not, do not proxt and power off the PC immediately without exiting the BIOS. If your BIOS can see the disk after hot plugging it, you know it is hot plug. But wait, you still not know if is it hot swap. For that you need another different disk, not the same model/brand/capacity, and continue with the test inside the BIOS. Now you must unplug the disk and see if BIOS hangs or if it detect now there is not such disk. If hangs, power off immediately, your BIOS is not hot swap. If it detects there is no disk, just continue the test to see if it is hot swap or not. If the BIOS detects no disk after unplug, now it is time to check another disk. Use one disk you do not need, it can die as soon as connected, you are warned. Plug it and see if BIOS detects it, if not then power off immediately, it has no hot swap implemented. If it sees the disk as if it were the previous one, power off immediately, no hot swap. By if it sees the new one, you are very lucky, the hardware has the implementation for hot swap. If such tests shows you that your hardware is not truly hot swap, no matter what do the OS, the hot swap procedure is very risky if not impossible at all. And better do not use it at all, always power down prior to swap. But if your BIOS show you it see the drive, then it see you unplugged it, then it see the other disk plugged, then you have hardware support for hot plug on that SATA port. I repeat, on that SATA port. Oh, yes, my friends. Some lazy manufacturers only implements hot swap on some ports and not on all of them. Risks of this tests you must support, losing SATA port because it dies when plugging a drive on it while being on BIOS. No matter, it would also die if you were running the OS, and with OS running it could also damage other SATA ports. Worst case scenario, SATA root controller died because no hot swap capable. If you were on BIOS, no data was on risk, but if you were running the OS you can lose all data and also damage other components like graphics card, RAM, F. Doing the tests while on BIOS is the safest. And if any damage is caused to SATA port, most times only one port dies. Anyway, if it is on warranty they must fix it, since legal rules impose manufacturers to not cause damage by connect/disconnect in a properly manner. Said again, do not try hot glue, hot remove, hot swap, if disk is powered by the Molex connector that is fixed to the disk. Not all drives has Molex power connector, most do not have it, and neither disconnect the Molex part of any Molex to SATA power adapters. Molex connectors are not designed for hot plug, hot remove, hot swap. They cause electrical peaks. PD, on some Molex pins, the current that is passing can be more than 3.5 A, that can kill a person, not common, but it can. The voltage, 12 V, is not what kill people, it is the amperage, and GT, 0.3 A can kill. No matter the voltage, it is the amperage what kills.
I have bought a SATA bay, which physically allows hot swapping. So I was wondering this question. Right now I got strange results. In Linux that was booted from hot swap worked. But in Linux loaded from SATA drive, hot swapping another drive caused reboot. I am not sure if some kernel parameters are involved, we'll explore later. And also we'll test with Windows OS. In Linux I use the following command, where I have chosen fields that I think may be relevant. It says that my SSDs are not removable, note RM and hotplug columns. However, I do not know how accurate is info from LSBLK. At least, I have noticed that SDC is shown as a rotatable disk, rota is 1, but that is false, because it is just an SD card. RM and hotplug fields stayed at 0 even after I enabled hotplug in UEFI BIOS for every port. Strange. I thought that at least hotplug field should become 1. I then additionally checked these things on a Supermicro server without hardware RAID, so just several SATA SSDs inserted to backplane, and they are surely hot swappable. However, RM and hotplug are always 0 there too, despite in server's BIOS the setting for hotplug was enabled or disabled.
If you already selected a reason